Welcome to Soulfire TV with tips, tools, and resources for your success as a soulpreneur. Today, I'm going to talk about 4 tips for choosing fonts for your brand. So why do you need to choose fonts for your brand? Well, because you want to have a consistent look and feel and message across your website, social media, emails, social media graphics, everything. It's really, really important so that people can recognize your brand to have the same fonts throughout the process. So tip number 1 is to only choose between 2 and 3 fonts maximum for your brand. Too many and it just gets dicey. Not to mention it gets confusing and it's hard to look at when you look at your website. So 2 is fantastic. If you really want 3, that's fine also. Tip number 2 is to make sure that it's legible. And by legible, I mean readable, especially your paragraph font. So when you're choosing fonts, you definitely want to pick one that is the paragraph font, like the just regular font size across everything. So all your pages, your blog posts, your about page, that individual font there. Then you want to make sure that you have a header font. It could be the same as your paragraph font or it could be different. And then you might have a funky extra font for like special headings and graphics, or maybe in your logo or something like that. So maybe that is like calligraphy or like a funky brush script or something like that. So all of those, though, you want to make sure that people can read them, because that's the point, right? Is that people read your content. So if it's unreadable, then they're not going to be able to see what you're saying. Tip number 3 is actually to make sure that it's a common font, especially your paragraph font. So often it can be like, oh, I want to be 100% original in my fonts. Well, guess what? Then if you go on your email provider or a different platform or even on your website, it's going to be harder for that to be part of the list of chosen fonts. So I'm going to put a list below of the most common fonts, and you're going to want to pick from that list for your paragraph font, because if you get too funky with your paragraph font, you're going to need to add all sorts of code and do all sorts of like extra stuff to make sure that people can read it on their computers, and that's not fun. So when you're picking your paragraph font, it's really easier to just pick one of the common ones, and they're still a style for every single one and a feeling for every single one. Which leads us right into tip number 4, which is when you're picking your fonts, especially your like funky header font, like again, whether that is calligraphy or brush script or anything like that, think about how your brand feels and how you want people to feel when they're looking at your brand images and your brand fonts. So do you want it to feel whimsical or fun? Do you want it to feel edgy? Do you want it to feel bold? Do you want it to feel crazy? Whatever feeling words that you want, you can type those into the font searches and actually find fonts that evoke those feelings. But make sure that you feel that when you look at the font more than anything else. And if you need a second opinion, don't just shout it out to the world. Ask your ideal clients specifically if they like the font or not, or how they feel when they look at it. And I'm going to give you a bonus tip. Tip number 5, please, please, please don't ever choose Comic Sans for your font. Seriously, I mean you. Unless you're like 13, we're not in junior high anymore. Seriously, I'm pretty sure I used Comic Sans for my first website, which I made in junior high. So if you're in junior high, go ahead and use Comic Sans. And if you're not, please avoid it. Thank you. If you have any questions about this, or if you just want to show off what your fonts are, post them in the comments below. I'd love to see what you have, what combinations and all that fun. And if you know anybody who is in the branding process or creating a website, or if you know anybody that has some really shitty fonts and you want to send them this video, just say, hey, you might want to consider these tips. Pass it along. Use the share buttons below. Can't wait to see you in the next episode of Soulfire TV.